The first thing Talvik noticed was the silence. Asterisk, she had served aboard warships for 11 years. Long enough to recognize the difference between emptiness and absence. Space was never truly quiet. Even in the deepest void, a ship carried its own voice, the constant hum of engines, the rhythmic pulse of power conduits, the faint vibrations of life moving through metal corridors. A living vessel breathed, it murmured. It existed. The pale silence did none of those things. The quiet pressed against the hull like a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. It felt deliberate, as though the darkness itself had leaned closer. To listen, Talvik's secondary heart tightened, a cold pressure settling beneath her carapace. Instinct whispered a warning her training could not silence. Asterisk, this was wrong. Asterisk. She stood at her station on the intelligence deck, her upper forearms gliding across translucent data panels, while her lower pair rested against the console for balance. Information scrolled past in neat, orderly lines: stellar cartography, radiation dispersal, gravitational anomalies. Everything read within acceptable parameters. No threats. No irregularities. Normal to normal. Asterisk. Talvik had learned long ago that true danger rarely announced itself with alarms and flashing indicators. The most lethal situations were quiet ones that looked harmless until they weren't. Asterisk, she glanced. Up at the bulkhead display, showing a cross-section of the ship. 412 life signs glowed faintly within the pale silence. 412 loyal soldiers of the Serati Dominion, bred for discipline, hardened by conquest, and confident in the certainty of their place in the galaxy. Asterisk, and yet unease crept through her like a slow-spreading infection. Asterisk, the pale silence was a reconnaissance cruiser, one of the Dominion's finest. Long, narrow, and blade-shaped, its hull absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Every curve served speed or stealth. 6 smaller escort vessels flew in perfect formation around it, their movements synchronized down to fractions of a second. Together, they formed the 3rd Deep Reconnaissance Group. Their orders were simple: enter human space. Asterisk, Talvik summoned the mission briefing again, even though she could recite it from memory. The seal of the High Matriarchy shimmered at the top of the display, unmistakable and absolute. Orders issued under that mark were not debated. They were obeyed. Asterisk, the language was formal, stripped of emotion, but Talvik could sense the hunger beneath it. The Serati Dominion was expanding. Expansion was not ambition, it was necessity. In the last galactic cycle alone, 17 civilizations had been absorbed, their resources cataloged, their populations reorganized, their resistance neutralized. Asterisk, the Serati did not hate those they conquered. Hate was inefficient. Asterisk, they believed the galaxy was a garden, vast and chaotic, and that only careful cultivation prevented rot. Species either served the greater order or were removed before they could threaten it. Simple. Logical. Asterisk. Yet one region of the spiral arm remained untouched. Human space. A quiet stretch of stars encircled by warning buoys broadcasting in thousands of languages. United Earth territory. Officially claimed, quietly avoided. Entire trade routes bent around it like water around stone. The matriarchy wanted certainty. Were humans truly dangerous? Or had fear exaggerated a minor threat into myth? If they were weak, if the warnings were empty, then the question was not whether they would be consumed, but how quickly. Asterisk, Talvik closed the briefing and accessed the intelligence archives. This was her domain. She had studied dozens of species, dissected their cultures, mapped their vulnerabilities. She could identify a civilization's breaking point the way a surgeon identified an artery. Asterisk. The human files unsettled her. Asterisk, not because of their content, but because of their gaps. Asterisk. There were extensive records on human biology: soft-bodied, warm-blooded, 2 arms, 2 legs, no natural armor, no venom, no claws of any consequence. It's physically unimpressive by Serati standards, Asterisk, a single Serati. Warrior could overpower a human in close combat with ease. Asterisk, their history was detailed as wars, ideologies, technological leaps, social collapses followed by recovery. They were chaotic, divided, frequently self-destructive. Asterisk, but when Talvik reached the military sections, the data thinned. Capabilities, unknown. Fleet strength. Estimated weapon systems, unconfirmed. The language changed from certainty to speculation. Asterisk believed. To possess asterisk unverified encounters. Suggest probable response patterns. Talvik felt a chill ripple through her. Asterisk. The Serati had been gathering intelligence on humanity for over a century. 100 years. Still no clear picture of their military strength. There was a reason for that. Everyone who had tried to find out had failed. Asterisk. The Dreth Combine had sent a slaving fleet 3 centuries earlier. 40 ships crossed into human space. None returned. No wreckage. No transmissions. Nothing. Asterisk, the Corvathi Empire had launched a full-scale invasion. 200 warships. Neutralized in 11 minutes. 11. The bright Chorisa hive species that had consumed entire sectors sent a bioship the size of a small moon. Weeks later, it was found drifting beyond human borders, hollowed out. Every living cell inside. It dead. No damage. Just empty. Asterisk Talvik scrolled through the records, her mandibles tightening unconsciously. There were rumors beyond the official reports. Smugglers who vanished. Pirates who ignored the warnings. Research vessels that grew curious. All gone. The galactic community had a name for the regions surrounding human space. The quiet and across cultures. Across ideologies. Across wars. There was one unspoken rule that everyone obeyed. Asterisk, you do not. Enter the quiet. Asterisk Talvik had cited this rule in her report when she was assigned to the mission. She had gone to Fleet Command and stated, calmly and respectfully, that sending a reconnaissance group into human space was a strategic error. Asterisk. They had acknowledged her concerns and dismissed them. Now, Commandant Ural stood on the bridge, her 6 legs planted wide on the command platform. She was old by Serati standards, her carapace darkened and scarred by decades of warfare. She had conquered 3 civilizations for the matriarchy. Her mandibles were strong. Her gaze was sharp. But Talvik knew the truth. Ural was afraid. Asterisk not. Of humans, of failure, of returning without answers, of admitting that the greatest military power in the known galaxy hesitated before a young species barely centuries old. Asterisk, that fear drove her forward like a lash, and it made her deaf to caution. Asterisk how? Long until we reached the buoy perimeter. Ural asked, her voice crisp. Asterisk 6 standard hours, Commandant. The navigation officer replied. Asterisk maintained course and speed. All ships in formation. Talvik remained silent at her station. She had said her piece. Asterisk now there was only observation. Recording the faint, irrational hope that the humans were not everything the galaxy believed them to be. Asterisk outside the hull. The darkness waited, patient, watching. The hours leading up to the boundary passed with unbearable slowness. Asterisk Talvik tried to focus on her work, but the numbers on her screens blurred together. Every few minutes, she found herself glancing at the ship's internal chronometer, watching. The countdown shrank in precise, merciless increments. The bridge crew grew quieter as the time approached. Conversations faded into clipped confirmations and silent nods. Even the ever-present clicking of Serati mandibles seemed muted, restrained, as though instinct itself was urging them to stay quiet. Asterisk 6 hours became 4, 4 became 2. Talvik could feel it then, a subtle shift. Not in the ship, but in herself. Her instincts tightened, coiling like a spring under pressure. She had felt this before, moments before ambushes, seconds before battle alarms screamed to life. But there was no enemy in sight, no weapons fire, no threat her instruments could define. Only anticipation. Boundary markers detected, the sensor officer announced. Asterisk, the bridge stirred. Officers straightened. The main display shifted as the forward cameras activated. The buoys drifted into view. They were smaller than Talvik had imagined, barely larger than Sarati escape pods, yet they dominated the void ahead of them. Perfectly spaced. Perfectly aligned. Stretching left and right as far as sensors could see, forming an unbroken line across the stars. Asterisk, each buoy pulsed with a soft blue light. Slow, steady, alive. Asterisk, they're broadcasting. Da-da, the communications officer said. Da-da. Her voice was steady, but her mandibles twitched between words. Asterisk, put it through. A rule ordered. Sound flooded the bridge. The voice that spoke was calm, flat, utterly devoid of emotion. It spoke in flawless Sarati. Every click and tonal inflection precise enough to shame a native speaker. Asterisk, you are approaching human-administered space. Identify yourself and state your intentions. Unauthorized entry is prohibited, you are advised. To alter course immediately, there will be no second warning. This message will repeat. The voice ceased. Then, after a perfect pause, it began again. Identical word for word, tone for tone. Talvik felt her lower heart stumble. This was not a translated message. It's not a crude linguistic approximation cobbled together by an automated system. This was mastery. The humans had studied Sarati language deeply enough to reproduce not just the words, but the rhythm, the cultural cadence. The voice sounded like an elder reciting doctrine. Formal, authoritative, unyielding. Asterisk. They had been watching the Sarati for a very long time. Disable the broadcast, your rule snapped. The sound cut off. Silence reclaimed the bridge, but it was no longer empty. It buzzed with tension, thick and charged, like the moment before lightning struck. Asterisk. Talvik forced herself to speak. Commandant? Permission asterisk denied, Yarul said without turning. All ships maintain formation. We cross the perimeter in 2 minutes. Asterisk. Talvik's mandibles tightened. She said nothing more. Asterisk. Across the bridge. She saw it then, the fear she had tried to deny. It flickered in the eyes of officers who had faced orbital bombardments without flinching. In the rigid stillness of soldiers bred for obedience, but not for suicide. Asterisk. Every living thing in the galaxy understood danger on a primal level, and every instinct in the room was screaming. The pale silence crossed the line. Asterisk. The buoys slipped past their hull, still blinking, still broadcasting their warning to the emptiness behind them. Nothing happened. No alarms, no weapons fire, no sudden appearance of enemy fleets. Asterisk. Just stars. Cold, distant, ordinary, and yet Talvik's unease sharpened into dread. It felt like stepping into a dark chamber and knowing without evidence, without logic, that something inside had already noticed you. Asterisk. Sensor sweep, Urel ordered. Full spectrum, 10 light-year radius. Asterisk. The sensor officer's upper arms trembled as he worked the controls. Talvik watched his movements. The tiny hesitation before each adjustment. Results flooded in. Nothing commanded, he said. After a moment, no ships, no stations, no energy signatures. Space is empty. Asterisk. Rules. Mandibles clicked in satisfaction, you see? Fear and reputation, that's all the humans have. Talvik didn't respond. She was staring at her own display. Asterisk. At first glance, it showed nothing unusual, but she adjusted the sensitivity, ran secondary filters, pushed the sensors beyond recommended parameters, and saw them. Ghost. Asterisk. Faint echoes of energy flickered across the grid, too brief to track, inconsistent to lock onto. Each one appeared for less than a heartbeat, then vanished. They were scattered everywhere, surrounding the fleet in a loose, impossible constellation. Talvik ran the analysis again. Each echo matched the energy profile of a ship. Asterisk. Not one ship. Hundreds, possibly. Thousands. Asterisk. They were not cloaked in any conventional sense. They weren't hiding, asterisk. They were simply not fully present, asterisk, observing from places Serati technology. Barely understood. Talvik felt cold spread through her veins. They had been surrounded the moment they crossed the boundary, maybe long before. Commandant, Talvik said, rising from her station. This time she did not ask permission. You need to see this. Rule turned, irritation sharp in her eyes. Before she could speak, the lights flickered. Just for an instant, the bridge plunged into darkness. Asterisk, in that frozen moment, every screen, on every station, lit up with the same image. Asterisk, 2 words. Asterisk, written in classified Serati military script, used only for internal, encrypted communications. A script no foreign species should have been able to access. Asterisk, you were warned. The lights returned. The screens reverted to normal. No alarms sounded. No weapons fired. Asterisk. But the bridge was no longer quiet. Asterisk, 400 hearts pounded in unison, fast and terrified. Asterisk, Urul stared at the display. Her mandibles opened, then closed. No command followed. No dismissal. No denial. Asterisk, for the first time since Talvik had known her. The Commandant had nothing to say. Asterisk, the pale silence continued forward, deeper into human space, carrying its crew, towards something unseen and unmeasured. And far beyond Serati perception, something watched them advance, waiting. 3 days passed after they crossed the perimeter. Nothing happened. No weapons fire. No communications. No visible pursuit. The stars remained distant and indifferent, and the pale silence drifted deeper into human space without interference. To an untrained observer, it might have seemed that the warnings were empty after all. Asterisk, to Talvik, the absence of action was unbearable. Asterisk, she had not slept properly since the words appeared on the bridge screens. Very few aboard the ship had. Sleep came in short, shallow fragments, broken by dreams of darkness and watching eyes. Crew members moved more slowly through the corridors now. Conversations ended the moment she approached. Laughter vanished entirely, as if sound itself might draw attention. Fear had settled into the ship like a disease. It did not scream, it did not rush. It spread quietly, seeping into every routine and every thought. Asterisk, discipline could not purge. Commandant Urul pretended not to notice. She spent her hours on the bridge, chewing orders with the same clipped authority she always had, studying star charts that told her nothing useful. But Talvik saw the cracks. Rul's mandibles clicked when she thought no one was watching. She lingered too long over decisions that once would have been instant. She had quietly ordered all weapon systems to remain at full readiness at all times. Asterisk. Supposedly empty space. Talvik returned again and again to her sensors. The ghost signatures continued. Asterisk, every few hours. Faint energy flickers appeared at the edge of detection. They never stayed long enough to confirm. They never followed predictable patterns. Sometimes they clustered close. Sometimes they vanished entirely for long stretches, only to return in greater numbers. Always watching, Talvik stopped reporting them after the first day. Urul dismissed them as sensor artifacts, background radiation anomalies, software drift, anything that did not require her to confront the truth. Asterisk, the humans were there, and they wanted the Serati to know it. Talvik was reviewing long-range telemetry when her console chimed. The signal originated from the bridge. The sensor officer's identification code flashed on her display. Asterisk, you need to come up here, he said. His voice was wrong, not frightened. Calm, flat. Asterisk. As if fear had burned itself out and left only disbelief behind. Asterisk, Talvik did not ask questions. She left her station immediately. Asterisk, the bridge doors slid open, and she stopped in the doorway. Asterisk, every officer on duty stood frozen in place. No one spoke, no one moved. Their eyes were fixed on the main display, mandibles slightly parted, bodies rigid with shock. Talvik followed their gaze and understood. Ships, hundreds of them, Asterisk, they filled the space ahead like a forest of dead. Massive silhouettes hung motionless against the stars, their hulls dark and lifeless. Some were enormous kilometers long, the size of small moons, while others were shattered frigates, twisted into shapes that barely resembled ships anymore. Asterisk, they drifted in silence. No power, no heat, no life. A graveyard. Asterisk. Talvik stepped forward slowly, her mind struggling to process the scale of it. She recognized designs immediately. Asterisk Corvathi dreadnoughts, her blade-shaped prows scarred and fractured. Asterisk directs combined slaving vessels. Cargo bays torn open and empty. Asterisk ships of unknown make and material vessels from civilizations erased, so completely that even their names had been lost to history. Asterisk. This was not debris from a single battle. This was accumulation, deliberate, curated. Asterisk. How many? Ural asked at last. Asterisk. Her voice was steady, but Talvik could hear the strain beneath it. The commandant was holding herself together by sheer force of will. Asterisk. Over 600 confirmed vessels, the censor officer replied, scattered across approximately 2 cubic light hours. Some are centuries old, others are recent. Asterisk. He hesitated. Asterisk. Commandant, he continued quietly. Some of them are Sarati. The bridge went utterly still. What? Ural said. Asterisk. 3 vessels. Sarati design, military configuration, matched the profiles of the Long Watch squadron. Talvik felt her lower heart seized. The Long Watch. Asterisk. Every Sarati child knew the story. 30 elite soldiers sent to chart unknown space 90 years ago. Lost, the matriarchy had said, to navigational failure. A tragic accident. A noble sacrifice. But here they were. Not lost. Not accidental. Dead. Asterisk. Floating among the remains of hundreds of other expeditions that had made the same mistake. Asterisk. Talvik felt something fracture inside her. The matriarchy had known. They had known what waited here. Known what happened to those who crossed the boundary uninvited. Asterisk. And they had sent the 3rd deep reconnaissance group anyway, not to gather intelligence. To test whether the humans were still watching, they were bait. Talvik looked at Ural and saw the realization mirrored in the commandant's eyes. Rage, betrayal, fear, all tangled together. Asterisk. We should turn back. Talvik said softly. Asterisk. Ruel did not answer immediately. Her mandibles clicked once, twice. Then she straightened her thorax and lifted her head. Asterisk. We will investigate, she said. Prepare a boarding team. I want answers. Asterisk. Talvik wanted to argue. Wanted to scream that the answers were already floating in front of them, but she was Sarati, soldier. Obedience was woven into her very biology. She assembled a team of 12 and selected a target. A. Corvathi dreadnought. Asterisk. Up close, the ship was immense, nearly 3 kilometers long. Its armor plating was thick, layered, built to withstand punishment that would tear lesser vessels apart. The Corvathi had been masters of naval warfare. This ship should have been unstoppable. It was dead. Asterisk. No power, no heat, no atmosphere. It drifted in vacuum like a stone at the bottom of an ocean. Asterisk. When Talvik's shuttle latched onto the nearest airlock, the magnetic clamps engaged with a hollow thud that echoed through the hull like a heartbeat in an empty chest. Asterisk. The boarding team entered in full vacuum suits, weapons raised, lights piercing the absolute darkness within. Asterisk. The corridors were intact. Asterisk. That was the first thing Talvik noticed. Asterisk. No scorch marks. No hull breaches. No signs of battle. No desperate last stand. The ship had not been destroyed. It had been shut down. Asterisk. This doesn't make sense, muttered Sergeant Crail, sweeping his weapon light across the corridor. His armor bore scars from a dozen campaigns, but his voice was tight, uneasy. Where's the damage? Where's the fight? Asterisk. There was no fight, Talvik said. She could feel it in the silence. Whatever had happened here had not been a battle. Asterisk, it had been something else entirely. Asterisk, and deeper within the dead ship, something waited to be understood.